Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia here. Welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup. Stage 4, Week 4 preview. So, we are really getting to the nitty-gritty of things now in the Overwatch League Stage 4. We are nearing the end of the regular season. Some teams already know that they're out of the running for the play-ins, some teams are in the running for the play-ins, some teams are in the play-ins, and some teams are in the playoffs. So, let's take a look at what is going to be, ultimately, a crucial week for a lot of teams. This week will be slightly shorter. There is one less game on the Friday and early morning Saturday. So there's 2 less games this week compared to other weeks. But also, obviously, next week is the LA Valiant homestand. It's the Kit Kat rivalry weekend, which will be a lot shorter than the weeks anyway. So, our first game of the week will be on Friday, August the 16th. It will be the Boston Uprising taking on the Florida Mayhem at midnight British Summer Time or 1 AM in Europe. This one is a must-win for Boston Uprising, undoubtedly. If Boston loses, they're out. Although Boston's chances of getting into the playoffs are very play-ins, I should say, are very slim anyway. Honestly, I think Florida Mayhem will win this one. Looking at Florida Mayhem's form right now, I think they're quite capable of beating the Boston Uprising. So, it's not looking brilliant for the Boston Uprising. On that 8-16 record, they've got 4 games left in their season. So, basically, they have to win them all. Not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy, and I don't see Boston doing it. And I think Florida will steal a win over the Boston Uprising here. Moving on, at 1:45 AM BST, or 2:45 in Europe, we have the Dallas Fuel taking on the Hangzhou Spark. So, Dallas in 14th on a 10-15 record. Hangzhou in 5th on a 15-10 record. Must win for Dallas, again. Dallas have 3 games remaining in their season, and they are currently 2 wins behind the play-ins, so every win counts for the Dallas Fuel. Hangzhou have looked uneasy with their troubles with Crystal, and also they're basically adjusting to the meta, but last week they did look like they were starting to make adjustments. They started to settle in. I still think Hangzhou Spark should have enough to see off the Dallas Fuel. And it's kind of a must-win for the Hangzhou Spark as well, because their fixtures only get more difficult from here, and they are not sealed in the playoffs. They are currently 5th, but they've played less games than, say, the Gladiators and the Spitfire have, and Seoul. So this is a real opportunity for the Hangzhou Spark to capitalise and make themselves more secure in the playoffs, and I think they will. Moving on, 3:30, which will be the last game of these clump, will be Seoul Dynasty taking on the Shanghai Dragons. That's 4:30 in Europe. This is a big game. Whoever loses this, I think, is not going to make the playoffs. So, it's a must-win game for both. Currently, Seoul are in the better position. They're on a 14-12 record, but they have played 1 more game than the Shanghai Dragons, who are on a 13-12 record. So, it's all to play for, but Seoul have a really superior map differential compared to even, say, like Spitfire or Hangzhou Spark, and especially compared to the Shanghai Dragons. So, Shanghai haven't looked particularly comfortable in this meta, surprisingly, in some respects, but Seoul have also looked inconsistent. They only scraped a win over the Toronto Defiant last week. So, again, it's possible to see either team run away with this, and I don't want to make a prediction about it, because I don't know. I don't know who's going to win that game. Moving on, at midnight or 1 AM in Europe on the Saturday, we'll have the Washington Justice taking on the Atlanta Reign. Washington Justice are trying to maintain their unbeaten stage. Atlanta Reign are also unbeaten this stage, so someone is going to finally lose. Atlanta are the ones with stuff to play for here. Atlanta are in the play-ins, and they're looking pretty good right now. They got that really decent map differential, so it's kind of a big game for Atlanta, but Atlanta have got a difficult week nonetheless. They've also got to play the current champions later on in the week as well. So, this is a really hard one to call. It's going to tell us who basically is the best team in this meta right now, apart from the Shock, so it should be an interesting one, but I think Washington might clutch this one out, which will make an interesting game later on in the week. Moving on, 1:45 AM or 2:45 in Europe, we have the Chengdu Hunters and the San Francisco Shock. So, this is kind of like every win's a must-win for the teams in the 11th, 12th, and 13th places right now, and below. But I don't see Chengdu Hunters getting a win over the San Francisco Shock. I think Shock should be able to see a win here, although Shock do have a top 6 place sealed and they can't catch Vancouver Titans, so they might well try some funky stuff that might open the door for Chengdu Hunters, but I still would go for a Shock win here. At 3:30 in the morning, or 4:30 in Europe, we have the Los Angeles Gladiators taking on the Hangzhou Spark. So, I told you the fixtures got harder for the Hangzhou Spark, and this is one of them. This is an interesting one. Hangzhou are going to have to show us that they've really adapted to the meta if they want a chance against the Gladiators. The Gladiators are looking fairly stable right now. Although, they almost got upset by some teams earlier in this stage. So again, this one is kind of wide open, but I will go for the Gladiators to squeeze a win over the Hangzhou Spark here. At 8 PM in Europe, 8 PM in BST, or 9 PM in Europe I should say, Paris Eternal are in action against the Shanghai Dragons. I think Shanghai should be able to see off the Paris Eternal here. Paris must win, that's without a doubt. They've got 2 games left in the season, they must win them both, and I hope other teams are going to slip up. I don't think Paris are going to make the play-ins. It's just so against the odds right now. I think Shanghai should be able to squeeze a win over the Paris Eternal, and they should keep their playoff hunt alive. Also, that depends on the Seoul Dynasty game, obviously. Moving on, at 10:15 BST, or 11:15 in Europe, we have the Los Angeles Valiant taking on the Boston Uprising. I think we should see a Valiant win here. Boston just look a bit too dysfunctional right now for me to back them, basically. Valiant are well within the hunt. They're in the 13th place. They are the team that is, who are not in the play-ins right now. They're the team that most probable of making the play-ins. Valiant, I think, should get the win over the Boston Uprising. And then moving on, 11:30 BST, or midnight in Europe, we have the Seoul Dynasty taking on the Philadelphia Fusion. Another interesting game that's quite hard to call. 2 teams fairly inconsistent. Seoul, I think, should have enough to see off the Fusion, because I think Fusion are way too dependent on Carpe and EQO popping off, and in this meta, they're not really doing that. So, I think Seoul should be able to see out a win here. But anything can happen, and Fusion must win if they want a chance at the playoffs. Although, I think Fusion are pretty much out of the playoffs now. Oh no, I think they can still catch the Hangzhou Spark, but they can't catch a Spitfire, I don't think, so it's up to them to try and catch the Gladiators or Spark, and I think that's unlikely. I don't think they can catch the Gladiators either, it's just the Spark they can catch, so it's looking really unlikely for Fusion to make the playoffs, but play-ins are certainly within grasp, but they also could fall out of them. So, wins mean a lot here. Wins mean a lot. But I think Seoul should be able to squeeze out a victory here. Moving on, at 1:15 in the morning, or 2:15 in Europe, we have the Chengdu Hunters taking on the Houston Outlaws. Houston have nothing to play for. They were knocked out of the play-in runs last week, and Chengdu Hunters are well within it, occupying that 12th place, and obviously they've had a more difficult game earlier in the week against the Shock. I would expect the Chengdu Hunters to be able to get a win over the Houston Outlaws, and Chengdu kind of need to do it in quite convincing fashion, considering the teams around them have got a better map differential than they have. So we need Chengdu Hunters, or we need to see a show from the Chengdu Hunters here and put Houston Outlaws to the sword. Moving on to our last 4 fixtures, at 8 PM on the Sunday in BST, or 9 PM in Europe, we have the London Spitfire in action against the Atlanta Reign. I said it is an interesting week for the Atlanta Reign, and this is where it gets really tasty. London, yeah, they've had their ups and downs, but they still look very proficient in the meta. Atlanta Reign are currently unbeaten, depending on the result, against the Washington Justice. So, this has a lot of meaning for the London Spitfire, because I believe if Spitfire can win this game, they will seal a top 6th place, which will seal them the automatic playoff place. Atlanta, they kind of need a win, but it also wouldn't be the end of the world if they didn't win, depending on their result against the Washington Justice. It's a big week for Atlanta. If they go 0-2, it's kind of looking, oh my, that's a big turnaround. If they go 1-2 or 1-1, then they're looking fairly decent. If they go 2-0, they're looking fantastic. So it's a big week for the Atlanta Reign, and I really don't know how to call that one. I think Reign might actually squeeze that one out. I don't have a trust in the Spitfire to get the job done all the time. And Reign have been looking really good, so I'm going to stick my neck out and back the Reign, but I'm probably going to be wrong, because that's the way the predictions are going right now. At 10:45 BST, or 11:45 in Europe, we have the Paris Eternal taking on the Washington Justice. By this time, I think this won't have any meaning, because I think Shanghai will knock Paris out of the play-in runs. I still think, even if they are in it, Washington Justice should have enough to see off the Paris Eternal. Washington Justice are looking really good in this 2-2 meta, and it's up to teams that are playing the Washington Justice, and this goes for Atlanta as well, to shut down Stratus and Corey. If they can do that, then they've got a chance. If they can't, then rip, basically, because those two are popping off left, right and centre. At 11:30 or 12:30 midnight in Europe, we have the Dead Dodos. We have the Florida Mayhem taking on the Toronto Defiant. Two teams who are completely out of the run-ins for the play-ins. This is about pride. And to be quite honest, I have no idea what the result's going to be. I will punt for a Florida Mayhem win, which actually means I'm actually backing Florida Mayhem to go 2-0 this week. Yeah, wouldn't have seen that coming in Stage 3. These teams are actually catching up, by the way. If Washington can go 2-0 this week, they have the opportunity to overtake not only the Toronto Defiant, but also the Houston Outlaws. So they won't be second bottom in the league. Interesting week ahead for the Washington Justice. But back to the Florida Mayhem, I think they should be able to see Toronto off just... I'm just still not sure about Toronto Defiant. Still not sure about them. And then the last game of the week will be at 1:15 on the Monday, or 2:15 in Europe, and we have the Dallas Fuel taking on the Guangzhou Charge. At this point, I think Dallas will be knocked out pretty much of the play-ins. And anyway, I would expect Guangzhou to knock them out, because Guangzhou are looking very proficient in this meta. They did get a thumping by the Spitfire, but Spitfire came into that game extremely prepared. Extremely prepared. And it cost them in the long run because they ended up losing to Florida. But they also, Guangzhou, stuffed New York Excel last week. So I think Guangzhou Charge should have enough to see off the Dallas Field. That will help the Guangzhou Charge up the league. And depending on the results, Guangzhou can still make the playoffs. So, and still make the automatic playoffs is what I mean. It depends what happens with the Hangzhou Spark. If Hangzhou Spark goes 0-2 this week, the door really does open for the likes of Seoul Dynasty, Shanghai Dragons, Guangzhou Charge, and perhaps even the Philadelphia Fusion, depending on results, to nick a spot in that top 6. So, it's really a crucial week. It really, really is. So, that is your week 4. Week 4 is going to be incredibly interesting. It's kind of a big week for Hangzhou Spark. And depending on the results for Hangzhou Spark and the Seoul Dynasty as well, who have got tough fixtures, it will have a massive impact on who is in the running in the last week for those playoff spots. London could seal one up pretty much. Gladiators could also seal theirs up if they get the win over the Hangzhou Spark. But if Hangzhou Spark do drop both games against Dallas and Gladiators, and we see Seoul maybe slip up as well, which is not entirely out of the remit, the one game against the Dallas Fuel for the Guangzhou Charge could really open doors for that Charge team, who have been looking very decent in this meta so far. In terms of the lower half of the league, to be quite honest, this week I expect Dallas, Paris, and Boston all to be knocked out of the play-in run. By the end of the week, we could be looking at a tussle between Atlanta, Chengdu, and the Los Angeles Valiant for the last few places, and perhaps the Fusion, depending on their results this week. But this week will shape up to see where we are at, and then week 5 will be an incredible week because we've got so many very close rivalries going on that week, which should be incredibly interesting. But I will leave it here for this one. I hope you're all enjoying the roll queue, which has just gone to live servers. I had an iffy first night on the roll queue, I'm not going to lie. It's not roll queue's fault, it's just some of the people using roll queue. Anyway, that's for another video. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in the next video. See you then.